Day 3 of the August 97 10-day retreat in Springwater. Early in the retreat, someone asked, "What do you mean by looking at thoughts? Watching thoughts, being aware of thoughts?" Because it happens the moment I look at a thought, it disappears. That in itself is an interesting phenomenon, isn't it? Try to look at a thought really attentively, and there's no thought, there's attention. But we're rarely so fully attentive. There's some partial awareness, and the thoughts that are running sooner or later become transparent. I want to be very careful in the words I use so one doesn't zero in on the words. It's not transparent for me. It's a dark mass moving by. Or at times I talk about listening to the thoughts, listening to the words or the dialogue, the monologues in the mind. And one of the expressions is looking at them. More recently, I've used this marvelous word coined by a Danish mystic, awaring it. But things becoming transparent is even better because there's no one doing anything to look, to listen, to aware. It's just what's there becoming visible, transparent, clear. And the reason it doesn't remain clear, even when it does happen, a thought running, an angry thought, storyline, a fearful one, body is already contracting in emotion. The reason it often doesn't remain clear is that we don't want to feel this way. We think something wrong has happened that shouldn't have happened. Shouldn't have become angry, shouldn't be afraid. Shouldn't be drifting off or fantasizing pleasurable things. And yet, this is what happens. And why not just allow it to have happened? To see it as it is, as it was, and make nothing of it. Nothing, not a thing. Nothing good, nothing bad, nothing clear, nothing unclear. To remain quiescent in the midst of the happening in this body, mind, and heart. I want to include this heart as much as possible. The assumption may also be there that watching my thoughts means something more than just that. It means, I don't know what it means for different people. But for some people, it evokes the urge or the compulsion to keep on thinking, as though keeping on thinking is the same as awaring thoughts. There's no need to keep on thinking when it's clear that there's thinking going on. But the reflex is to think about thinking. And in the manner that we expressed earlier, I shouldn't be thinking. When will this stop? Or it's all right, it's human nature. All of these comments that pour out of this brain to justify its functioning, its existence. So, at a moment of waking up to thinking and drifting and fantasizing having taken place, what else is going on beside that? And in that there is a stopping, a fresh attending. This moment, not yesterday or last time I was attentive. Now, and this is how we can communicate freshly all the time, because this moment is fresh. It's not yesterday's moment or last year's. Somebody mentioned this to me coming to a talk, really wanting to listen to the talk and finding right from the beginning it's the same stuff she's talking about. And as they observed, the attention was already gone. There was already some kind of criticism, annoyance, and the smog that arises from such thought emotions, which smogs up the clarity of just being here in all simplicity. Without making demands for new or old. Of course, it's the same thing we're always talking about. But can it be fresh this moment as the crowing of the caw, the cawing of the crow? But we get into this mind state, and it's very heavy, it is depressive. It's always the same stuff getting up in the morning. Everything is the same. One man who once went out with an automatic machine gun, mowing down 7 or 8 people in a convenience store or in a fast food place, reported that he could not stand anymore the boredom of every day the same thing. All the people are the same. It can weigh on one very heavily. This jadedness of this imprisonment in the sameness of our memories, our concepts, what is known, sort of pasted over the eyes and ears, the skin. But it's not an inevitable, necessary state, and can be waking up to the freshness of this instant. And it happens if we become wise, begin to become wise and intelligent about not allowing the pasting to go right on again by commenting, habitual comments, habitual reactions. Overlaying the freshness, the light of this moment. And another question also from that same day was about questioning. A person asked, how can I question things in myself without immediately up into the head, thinking and analyzing? This is what questioning automatically provokes for me. That's why I don't want to get into questioning. I want to leave it alone. I don't want to be in the head. And other people at times say, when I sit quietly, just open, being here, should I question? I don't know whether one should question or not. I don't assign questioning as a practice. I don't assign any practice. But can one play with this question and see whether it's possible to ask in a different way, in a fresh way? Why am I so upset? Or who is upset? Very frequent question. Who, which stops sort of thinking about it and starts looking, wondering into not knowing. To ask a question, why this fear? This deep-seated, constant companion of fear. Why? And not try to think about psychological, analytical things. What my mother or bigger sister did to me. But to sort of call it out into the dark valley of not knowing. And allow, in this mode of questioning, allow the thing to reveal itself, show itself from all kind of different angles as we go. Let the fear, the fearful relation, the fearful thoughts, the fearful sensations and stressing of the body reveal themselves as things are said and remembered, associated. To see this whole thing in operation now without needing to think of the past. If a memory is indicated, it will come up on its own in this process. And yet, if the head, thinking, is needed, one feels one has to think about this thing, but think it through. Why this upset? Why this anxiety? What all happened? Allow the head to participate. It's not to be cut off. Is it, a question may come up, is it because of this? Because I felt threatened. We were doing this last night in a group discussion. I feel my turf invaded by my husband. Is that it? And then pausing. Not immediately, as is our habit, somebody asks a question. From earliest times, we've been conditioned to feel we have to come up with an answer speedily. The quicker, the better. Because we have to be in the know, to have some sense of security. These are all such false assumptions that knowing really gives us security. So, in saying, well, is it because of this? And then pausing and allowing the whole situation to answer, to respond. It's hard right now. I don't have a concrete case. But if this is something that interests you, bring it up in a meeting. We can go through the whole thing. All I'm saying is not to think I mustn't think, or when it's not necessary, to let it go and ask into not knowing and get intimate with not knowing, that there's no danger in that. On the contrary, to ask into not knowing and move in that, and I'm talking right now meditatively in a retreat. We have to know when we drive a car what a red light means, and so forth. Here in this retreat, in not immediately having an answer, not immediately being in the know about something. There may be a real opening to look afresh, to listen anew, even to think freshly, not from knowing, but out of this moment of asking and not coming up with automatic, pat answers. Also, if one has a problem and has been thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, can there be a realization that this is becoming a repetitive loop in which nothing new is learned, not even intellectually? If there's a realization of that, it may abate on its own through that realization. And yet, if thinking about something reveals new things, then it doesn't have to abate. It can still go on. It will go on because at first, in our training, not in our natural ways, but in our training, the first thing has been to think something through, to think of a solution. And that has brought great security because it usually has brought approval and praise. Our elders. But to come in and of oneself to the realization how far thinking can go and where it cannot enter. Quietly sitting and wondering is not a thinking matter. Which brings up another question that came up in a group. Someone expressing such almost painful boredom at sitting. Really questioning, why am I doing this thing? Where I could be doing so many more, much more fun things. Of course, immediately the suggestions came. Why not look at this boredom? And the person said, well, I've been looking at it, but nothing changes. So again, what is this quality of looking at something? Me looking at my boredom? Or rather, a shift from having to endure this agonizing state to wondering about it. One could say a transformation from the sufferer to the inquirer. We all know what suffering is. This passive enduring of things accompanied by vivid storyline usually of poor me. Or whatever, in this case, how stupid to do this, where something much more enjoyable could be happening. And all of us, or most all of us, being very short of time, usually, our daily routines, even vacation rushing around from this place and that place and packing and unpacking. All of a sudden, having all of this time seems, well, what a waste of it. I could really use this for all the things I don't get done in my daily life. So recognize these thoughts and feel what they do in the body, the smog they create. And then the boredom with what is going on this moment, because it is not really touched. It's not really there. But a switch from suffering to wondering changes the body functioning. Over the years, one can really notice a very conscious change. Not intentional, I don't mean that, but it becomes transparent. Changing from enduring to wondering, from suffering to inquiring. Not that one has may not have any particularly clever question. What's going on, or what's happening, or what is it? That even may be too much. It doesn't need words. It needs a change of posture, if you will. And sometimes it is actually accompanied by a change of posture internally. What is going on? Not tell me what's going on so I see you know what's going on, but being all that's going on awarely. We're also talking about this quality of listening that comes out of wondering what is going on, right in the midst of boredom or whatever the state may be that this body-mind is entangled in. The emerging of a ever quieter listening. Have you ever felt that? How listening can become quieter and quieter and finer, like ever more finely tuned. Meaning less and less and less me in that fine listening. Me with its demands and needs and fears, which are felt at such time of fine listening to be in the way. They're not bad, they're just too coarse for fine listening. Not listening to something or looking for something to listen for, but just the fineness and quieting of attending. One knows not to what. And in this things are felt, seen, and heard which were overlooked, overheard before. The universe inside and out comes alive. Again, this is something, if it seems not clear or one wants to go over it again, we can do that. We can go over it together. Not needing to remember what was said. We can always meet freshly. That's the beauty of this work. It's an undying source of attention, awareness, presence that can be tapped. Now the general concern of last night's group meeting was how do we communicate with each other? How do we listen to each other? Particularly as the case was brought up when what this person wants to tell me is nothing I can comprehend. It's much too heady, too lofty, too intellectual. A wife talking about her husband who was in school learning new things. And the reporting feeling so separate from this person. other people saying that it happens to them in group meetings. One is not interested in what someone else is saying. It seems to be so far out of or off the track, and one doesn't feel part of it, or it's too intellectual. That's often being mentioned. Things are too intellectual in this group for me to follow it or want to follow it. I feel I am spacing out. And then we came to this. How do we communicate with each other? How do we listen to each other? Just to the words, which we may not comprehend, and therefore a resistance arising. I'm not going to go there again and listen. Or do we see this whole magnificent play going on among each other, trying to impress each other? That may be going on, trying to boost oneself, to show that one is in the know, and then noticing the stirrings inside. I also want to show them that I know better, I know different. There's so much that is exposing itself when we're together, beside the words that are being spoken. And that kind of theater can be clearly revealed if one is not resentful or resisting, but just present, with no expectations, no needs of one's own to be gratified. Is that asking too much? We're not asking it. We're just saying this is what can happen. This is how we can enter in on each other. And there's not all of this neediness to be heard or to be seen, to be somebody. And yet, seeing it operate, the power of it in oneself as well as in the others. To learn about this, about human interaction and its tremendous difficulties and obstacles, and also the dissolving of those difficulties and obstacles. One doesn't enter into this game because there's clarity about it. And that clarity is not just from observing those others, but within. What goes on in this human being who is representative of human beings in general? And again, the readiness to question. Somebody says something that counters what I have said. Do I get hurt? If I do, why do I get hurt? What is getting hurt? What needs to compensate or attack back? To see the rapidity of those responses. Something says something to me, and I have to hit back in a similar manner, or else close up. Maybe punish by withdrawing, by being moody. Like someone said, there's such a wealth, such richness in our meeting each other to observe beside the very topic that is being talked about. What comes to mind from memory is someone talking about their father dying recently. The felt closeness to someone one had been so critical of, resisting his ways, which were objectionable enough, the rational mind says now. And yet wondering, really deeply wondering, why are we so hard on each other? Do we have to be? Is it always in hindsight with the regrets that we could be different? But now it's too late. He's dying, he's dead. So can there be in our present living some moments in which what somebody is and does is all right the way it is, allowing it to be in a loving way, even though it's not particularly lovable, but the presence is a gentle one, an accepting one, a forgiving one. Oh, I have difficulty with this word forgiving, because if something doesn't hit any target inside, what is there to forgive? When we're without target. That's just what is. And we are like this, and they are like this, we're all like this. Why is it so hard, as this person said? I don't have an answer for it. But if the question keeps working, maybe it'll surface at a hard moment and soften it. And give such relief to oneself and the others. Because we're all afraid of criticism. I'm so amazed always how difficult it is for oneself and for other people to take even the slightest of criticisms. There's already some defensiveness there. Some fear of not being accepted, being rejected, not coming up to what? Perfection. The difficulty that all of us have been trained into of admitting that we're wrong or have been wrong. Of course, one can learn to become good at this and just sort of list all the things that one has done wrong, but that can still be a protective mechanism to protect something. Now I am an honest person, an honest admitter, and clinging to that image and wanting that to be accepted and applauded. It's something deeply within, this holding on to some me that needs to be right and approved of and safe. Safe in what? What is this me that gets hurt and defensive and critical? Seeking love and itself so incapable of loving that me I'm talking about. What is it? Can one fine-tune it out? Try to come upon it, what it is? Or is the finer the tuning, the deeper the inwardness of looking and listening, the less there's there to find? Because there can always be plenty of thoughts to take the place of emptiness. And those thoughts are powerful. great control over the body. But in listening again and finding the source of those thoughts, or looking for the source of those thoughts, it gets quiet again and unpopulated. So at this moment of quiet fine-tuning, being here, what am I really? Yes. And breathing, and the stomach gurgling. A vast open hall full of light. Not the idea of it, not the conceptualization which may set in so quickly. Where does that come from? Someone says, if I try to look at a thought, it disappears. We will end here for today.